Hi, I'm Nick Gora from NeuroNeeds. I'm a principal with the company. And in this particular Zoom event, Empowering Moms Navigating Life with Special Needs Kids, I'm thrilled to have some really interesting moms here to talk about their life journeys and experiences. I want to also note that next month we're doing a dads event. I don't want dads to feel left out. And the following month, if we can garner enough interest, we'd like to hear from the siblings of special needs kids as well, to get sort of a rounded perspective on life in such a family. And so I'd like you all to introduce yourselves briefly, just you as individuals, a little background about yourselves so listeners and other people that may check in later can learn something about our really interesting panel. So Bobbianne, would you like to start off?
Sure. I'm Bobbianne Elizabeth. I work with Nick at NeuroNeeds. I work in their marketing department, and I specialize in SEO and video marketing. So artist by trade, but I am also an advocate with Connect4, and I'm a board member with Unique Families Journeys Foundation, which does free advocacy for people doing the PPT process. In addition to that, Asher and my son is nonverbal autistic, and we both have chronic PTSD because we're domestic violence survivors. So I advocate a lot for survivors like ourselves.
All right, thank you, Bobbianne. Lena?
Yes, my name is Lena Esposito. Then I'm a party leader. I have a beautiful autistic daughter. She's 19. Then she's my passion. I'm part of a lot of state advisor councils, regional advisor councils. I'm an advocate, and I work with many organizations right here in Connecticut. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy Bodkin. I'm autistic myself, and I have two children, both of which are autistic. I worked in public schools as a school psychologist for a while. Then I started consulting with private schools. And then my children ended up being homeschooled. And so now I consult with mostly homeschooling families worldwide, helping them figure out, okay, what's blocking us from being able to live our best life. So that's a little bit about what I do. I also work sometimes with public and private school students, but mostly my focus has been on homeschooling for the last 5-6 years.
Okay, great, interesting. And Jeanetta? Tell us a little
my name's Jeanetta Bryant. I have a 14-year-old daughter that originally at her diagnosis, we knew that she was off of the beaten path of typical development. She has a brother that's 2 years older. But when she was diagnosed, we were told things like she has ADD, ADHD, aggressive language disorder, receptive language disorder. She has hypotonia. She has autism. And she's never going to be able to. And that was where we were introduced into this world, never going to be able to have social or academic gains. And I just felt like the idea of a hopeless prognosis shouldn't exist, that there's so much that our kids can do and so much that they can overcome, that it set us on the journey of being advocates, not only for her and our family, but also for the community at large, so that we could optimize every family's experience so that their kids could be their best. So we have a nonprofit. And, I'm glad to have two kids, one neurotypical, one neurodiverse, and constantly have my foot one in each world, right? Like I'm straddling it regularly.
Well, thank you. So what I wanted to ask you all is, I wanted to get your perspective on where you are in life's journey. Sort of, I'm in the beginning and I've got a lot to accomplish. I feel like I've done pretty well, but there's still a little bit more to do. Or I'm in that phase where I think my child is the best they can be, and I want them to be independent and experience a certain level of having control over their own life. I'm interested to hear where you all are in your journey, or at least how you would describe where you are in your journey. And there's no order here, so if you feel compelled to speak out, go ahead. And if you don't say anything, I'm going to ask you to answer it. So whoever would like to go first, go on.
Well, I don't mind sharing. Lindsay, like I said, she's now 14. Our story's been an open book for a very long time. And like I mentioned a moment ago, we came from a really hopeless place where the symptoms were incredibly severe. I consider her a point-run scream kid. When she was 2, 3, and 4, that was all we got. And I joked that I was skinnier then because all I did was chase her. So I didn't sleep and I chased her nonstop. And it was hard. You know, I have so much sympathy for families that are in that stage of the game right now, because I think that's the hardest it ever is coping with the idea that you might not have the same future that you had projected upon them once upon a time, and dealing with the realities of it being really difficult. It's like emotionally difficult, physically difficult, financially difficult. It is just so hard at that early onset point. And as time develops, I don't know that life gets easier, but we start understanding the diagnosis a little bit better. We start putting together measures of things that support them best and best practices, which makes life a little easier. And then I don't know how many other families, but I think that there's several of us out there that become complacent once we get out of that crisis mode. Like, okay, well, you know, life is manageable now. So you kind of take your foot off of the accelerator and you settle into a routine and you go, but this isn't good enough. Complacency is what I feel like we fight against most of the time, because she's made such huge gains. You know, she does talk now and she does all these sports and she has friends and she's doing well. Not that she's caught up with her peers, but she's doing well. And so we're constantly fighting against complacency and pushing her further down the road, because just because life is manageable now doesn't mean that leads to her best self and what we can get out of her in the future. So I come from a point of seeing it at its worst and knowing that it gets better, or at least living the experience of my daughter having the experience of having those symptoms dissipate some, and knowing that the biggest battle we're in now is complacency and trying to continue to forge forward and dig just as much as we did early on.
Wow, that's great. Just briefly, Suri, can you hear us? I don't see your cameras on.
I can, yeah, I'm here. Can
Okay,
everybody
good.
else, can the rest of the panelists see me?
I can see you.
Okay.
All right. We're going to
Okay.
come back to you in a minute, Suri. Sorry.
No worries. No worries.
Who else would like to tell us where they're at in their journey, or at least where they perceive themselves? That was really good, Jeanetta. Thank you. Suri, would you like to jump in and tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are in your journey? And what I mean by that is, you know, I'm just starting out and got a diagnosis and I don't know what's ahead of me. I feel like I've been able to sort of manage part of my life and get to a better place, or, you know, at this point, I feel like my child's in a very good place and I want them to just be independent. We want to get a sense of where you are.
Sure thing. So my name is Suri. I'm the mom of 4, grandmother of 7. It's our youngest child who is our impacted child. She's not autistic, but she is. She does have mitochondrial disease, complex 1 mitochondrial disease. I think we were one of the very, very, very lucky families in that we got a diagnosis really early. I think she was about 8 or 9 weeks old when we got a diagnosis, super early for the mito community. The downside to that was she was really sick, which was why I think we got a diagnosis. Similar to what was shared before, it was a very dire, a very dire prediction of, she's not going to make it. If she does make it, she'll be severely, severely impacted. And so we were very fortunate to get recommendations for supplementation for mitochondrial cocktail therapies at another major medical center. And I think, I want to say she defied the odds, but I really think it's partly the science that, had her defy the odds. She's now, she'll be turning 15. She goes to a mainstream private high school. She's got lots of friends. She's awesome. She has ADHD, which can be a challenge, but I'll take that challenge. And I would say, just Nick, to answer your question a little bit more directly, where is she? Mitochondrial disease is not a predictable path. And so there have been periods of times that she looked deathly ill, and periods of time where she was almost indistinguishable from her peers. I would say right now, she's had a bit of a setback. And so it just takes a lot of juggling, because energy needs are different throughout the course of a day, throughout the course of a week, a lifespan. And so for us, I think, that idea of not falling into complacency, like was brought up earlier, is really, really important for us, because if we get complacent, we can find ourselves in a hole that we can't dig out of. So that's kind of our story in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. So Bobbianne, do you want to step in here? And
Yeah, I feel like after being in my nephew is special needs and he is ID and he's 5 years younger than me. So I grew up with him. We're at the place where Asher's been diagnosed, he's 5, but trying to get him outplaced into an appropriate school that can also handle his ADHD, nonverbal autism, plus his trauma background. So we're in the middle of that battle right now and advocating like crazy to get him the help he needs. So I feel like there's a couple of real bottlenecks, right? It's getting the kiddo into the right school in the beginning. And then once they age out of public school, getting them either into day programs, the workforce, college, all of that. So we're at that point, and that's what I really advocate for, is that we shouldn't have these bottlenecks. These kids deserve to have a future, of not just sitting around and watching TV all day. So that's what I really work for every day, and try to make that change.
Awesome. Lena, do you want to tell us where you're at with your child?
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Nick. My daughter is 19. I just said. Then everything started maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, when we got a car accident. Both of us, we were crossing the street, and then a car hit us. Then from there moment, both of us, we had traumatic brain injury. Then and then of course, the PTSD. Then for me, I knew it, all these different, cognitive, skills that I lost it. But for my daughter, it was the aggression and the mental health that spiked on her. Then for 3 or 4 years, after that, she continually beating me at home. I was sent to emergency room so many times. She was restrained and seclusion so many times at school, even though that she is in a behavioral school. She was transferred to many hospitals right here in Connecticut. 3 or 4 hospitals. She was placed for months. Medications were put for the max to try to, to calm and just control her a little better, but it wasn't really working. Then I asked DDS for help. Then when I asked for help, they opened an investigation for me, because I was a parent with disabilities. They were concerned about that. Maybe, I was going to manage it well for her at home, even though that I have 100%, hours covered at home. Then I asked for the group home. Then the DDS said that she wasn't going to leave me to place my daughter in a group home unless I give my parental rights. Then that was very hard for me.
Your parental rights?
Yeah, unless I terminate my parental rights. Then that was very hard for me to hear, right? Because she's my only child. I know that she's aggressive. I know that she was beating me home. I know that I have support 100%, but I didn't want to leave my parental rights. Then the situation, they continue. I say, I'm not going to give my parental rights. Then she continued to send me to the hospital. She continued, injure herself, injure, everybody. Until one day, DDS, I asked so many times, okay, what is the limit? How many times do I need to be in the hospital? How many times my daughter needs to be in the hospital in order to get my daughter get placed in a group home? Because for me, that was the limit. I can be in the hospital every day, Then it's the time, is the amount of bruises that we are talking about here. Because I was in the limit of everything with all the services here. She was beating everybody. Then one day they call me and say, listen, your daughter got approved. Then she was placed in a group home. But it's not. Then then after that, I start feeling, with all this stigma about, the society, myself, my family, because everybody start looking like, oh my God, really? You leave your child there? Then it start kind of, people made me feel like a little bad, like I was doing a bad mother, that I wasn't doing a good job, that it was my fault that she's there, then that's the part, I passed the part because I said, listen, I didn't have another option. If I have another option, I will have my daughter here. But at this point, I didn't have another option. She's unstable, and I need to be stable. She can injure, I can fall again, at home. And if I bang my head, I probably not going to recover anymore. Then this is between life and death. Then that's how she is right now. She's not stable because she's been in everybody in the group home still. But she's safe.
Is she nonverbal also?
She is nonverbal. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
With multiple disabilities and multiple autistic with multiple mental health diagnostics as well.
Okay. Amy, can you tell us about your journey, please?
Yeah. So my kids are now 16 and 14, and I would say right now, like, we're in a pretty good place. When they were little, we were going through the diagnostic process, and I really had to come to terms with the fact that I had been misdiagnosed as a kid. Honestly, I should have realized that like 20 years ago, because I heard Temple Grandin speak while I was in graduate school, and I'm looking around the room going, why are all these people hanging on to every word? Doesn't everybody think like that? Like, that should have been my sign. But then when my daughter was born, she was exactly like me. Like, we had some kind of weird, like, ESP thing going on where I could actually tell what she was going to do before she did it, which was great because she seemed to find new ways to try and kill herself daily accidentally. So it was great that I kind of had an idea of, oh, okay, she's going to go jump on her hoppy ball on the bed and then fall off and hit something sharp, and then I get there just in time to catch her. So that worked out really well. And then I was thinking, oh, well, this isn't too bad because, I know what she's thinking. And then I had my second one, and he wasn't at all the same. And, they both had a lot of challenges when they were younger. And what we ended up discovering, and it really kind of changed my perspective professionally, and I did definitely look like kind of like a crazy mom for a while there. I definitely got some of the crazy mom feedback from some of the doctors we were seeing. But both of them and me all had a connective tissue disease that's genetic. We ended up with dysautonomia, with mast cell activation syndrome, and celiac disease. And turns out kids do not function and learn well when they feel like crap inside. Shocking. So we worked really hard, and we put a lot of money into trying to address health concerns. But honestly, like, it was 100% worth it, because the better they feel, the better they're able to learn and grow and live their best life. I'd never say that, like, oh, it cured them of their autism, because I'm like, all right, that's a developmental, like, that's the way your brain is developed. We can't go back in and undo development, but we can learn to live with it the best possible for our body. And why not optimize the body and life experience that we have to live our best life? We've definitely had periods where all of the health conditions definitely, like, really set us back. I had a huge setback this last year and a half. But it's opened a lot of doors for being able to, like, get more diagnoses, get more known, figuring out how can we help you live a healthier, better life than I have, even because we're learning from my experiences. Now we are definitely doing high school level work. My daughter had a boyfriend for a while there. That was an interesting experience. We've done lots of different things. And yes, I mean, as far as we think about education goes, yeah, it looks like they may be independent. But one, we didn't know that in the beginning. And two, nobody's truly independent. Part of the reason why I am able to do the things that I do is because I chose to partner myself with some really amazing people, most especially my husband. Like, that was the best decision I ever made in my entire life. But having people in your life who can support you, that's the goal, because you don't have everything. Nobody does. Some of us just have more extreme strengths in one end and extreme weaknesses in others. But having those people in your life, it's so critical. And that's been one of the joys of having both of my kids, because they are so completely opposite. Like, one learned to read it by at least 2, if not earlier, and the other one learned to read at 9.5. And so they've always been able to bring their strengths and weaknesses to share with each other. And so homeschooling them together has been really fun, because I get to see them help each other and learn to accept each other's differences. My favorite memory of them is snuggled up in bed together, where he's like 4 reading a chapter book aloud to her, and she's narrating back to him what the story's about, because he's reading it, but he has no idea what's going on. So it's my favorite.
That's great. Well, these are, I mean, you guys are all at different places, but one thing that I want to ask you all is, I mean, Suri, that sounds like a pretty traumatic situation. Bobbianne, Lena, Amy, you know, 2 kids, Jeanetta. What are you doing for yourselves to help you to be that best advocate, to be that best warrior mom, to be there for your child? Because it sounds pretty taxing. It sounds like sometimes you don't know what to expect and you're on a red alert. What are you doing for yourselves to make sure you are the best mom that you can be? Or is that always secondary? Jeanetta, you started and you've been listening for a long time.
I think that you kind of adapt a little bit over time. People tell you initially that you need to do self-care, and you kind of, if you're like I am, I consider myself one of these fighter moms, right? Like, I'm going to fight for my kid to be your best, and I'm not going to let anything stop me, and we're going to get through this. And you kind of think self-care, you can't worry about that right now. But the reality and the way that I try to shape the conversation for other people that aren't familiar with our world is that if your child were at school and they were to fall off of some piece of equipment and break their arm, everything in the world stops for you. You leave work immediately. You don't take the next meeting. You're not worried about returning phone calls. You're there for your child. You're taking them to the hospital. You're getting them the care that they need. And for the next, it could be that day. It could be for the next several days. The whole world stops. And you care for your child because they had this acute thing happen, and you're able to repair that. But when you're given a diagnosis that is a lifelong diagnosis, we sometimes jump into it the same way. Like, we try to put everything on the shelf, or hey, we try to just stop the entire world until we can figure out what's going on with our kid. And it doesn't take long for you to realize that you're not going to get that instantaneous gratification of having a result, even though you're pouring yourself into it night and day for months on end. You're not going to see that the same way. And it's a learning curve that each of us have to go through to some extent. And those of us that aren't fighter parents, that are maybe a little slower to the game, we have to encourage them to fight harder. But the reality is that self-care comes in whether you want it to or not. Because when you have that, it can be anything, right? It can be, and I try to encourage parents to understand that self-care doesn't have to be that you're going to the spa, although spa days are really great. It can just be that you're going for a walk around the block, that you're walking away from the chaos of your house for just a few minutes.
Right.
It can be, a Snickers bar that's hidden away that nobody else knows about, that you're eating at 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, self-care can look like a lot of things. It doesn't have to be flashy, but you do have to think about yourself a little along the way, because I guarantee you that nobody else is going to be your child's champion if it's not you. And that, the cliche of it's a marathon, that kind of stuff, it just comes into focus after you start wearing yourself thin.
Agreed. All right, Suri, do you want to tell us what are you doing to help keep yourself in that warrior mode?
Yeah, so what I was saying was I think that there are times that there's like acute phases where you just sort of have to dive in with everything you have because life depends on it. child's life. And in those moments, and my husband and I talk about it, like it's almost like you're in a tunnel, like in a vortex, and there's nothing that exists outside of that crisis. And then you have, at least for us, we've got this kind of chronic piece where there's a marathon and it doesn't go away. I think for us, there's this odd combination of both acute and chronic that pop up really unpredictably. Things can be, kind of going along, really well, and then all of a sudden there's a crisis. And for us, that's been traumatic in a very different way. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, by the way, so mental health is my space professionally. So I knew that there was something different about our experience than, let's say, parents that have a child with cancer. That's acute, and there's a beginning, and there's generally a beginning, and there's an end. For us, there are acute phases that have beginnings and ends, but in between is this sort of unpredictable chronic. And I think as human beings, we tend to settle into some complacency during those chronic periods. And for our daughter, if we were to settle into any sort of complacency during those more chronic periods, we would end up back in crisis. And that's not a place that we want to be. So what does self-care look like? I'm not sure I'm the expert. I'll just start off by saying that I think for everyone, it's really different. And sometimes the signal to myself that I've got to do a better job with self-care is really when I'm starting to wear thin, when I'm not keeping it together. That's my signal. I tend to kind of fall back on DBT principles of reducing emotional vulnerability, and really looking at how do I keep myself strong during those not critical moments, so that when there's a wave of something awful, I have more resilience. And for me, that looks like making sure that I'm eating nutritious food, sleeping well, exercising, and doing something that I enjoy every day. And I think that's really what the science says reduces emotional vulnerability in the end. Now, it's not a magic wand. I wish it was. But I certainly know that when I'm not attending to those things, when something acute comes up, I'm much less equipped to deal with that. I'll just kind of plug therapy. There were points over the last 15 years where I worked with my own therapist. My affected child's siblings worked with therapists to help them with their issues. And there's nothing wrong with the spa.
I like that. I mean, I think that's correct. Lena, what about you? What are you doing to keep yourself in a good place and be the best you can be?
Well, don't forget, Nick, I have a traumatic brain injury. Then for me, my cognitive skills sometimes are a little awkward, a little off. Then I had to do a lot of therapy, in order to regulate myself. Then what I use one technique that I call the spoon therapy. I don't know, maybe Suri, maybe you're familiar with that. This one is that if it's something that I had to concentrate a lot, my memory, and I had to be very focused, then I give a value, maybe like 5 or 10, between 1 to 10. Then maybe I put 10, then after that, I had to do something that is going to balance that level of concentration that I had to put in something. Then I do another activity, that is going to lower that number. Then that's why I manage it like that through the day. Then that always, helped me a lot. The other thing that I say, that it helps me just, I always like to be updated with everything. Then that's why I'm part of several, councils and things like that, because I want to know what is the new laws, what is the new regulations, and how we can make things better. Then having all that knowledge, it helped me just kind of to see what is my own personal goals. then that's what something that I always I told the other parents, like, please don't lose your personal goals, because I remember when my daughter was placed in a group home, I didn't know what I was anymore, because I passed so many years at home with her. Then my mother used to ask me like, "Oh, just do some hobby." I was like, "Hobby? I haven't done hobbies in years. I don't know." Then she was asking my mother like, "What do you like to do?" I was like, "I don't have idea. I didn't know what it was the thing that I used to do when I used to go to college, when I used to, when I used to work, I spent all my life, just working with my family and my daughter, dedicated to my daughter." Then that's what right now I recommend, that we can lose our personal goals in life. That's going to make us be a little more focused and get better to the our feelings. Have like a little purpose in life, but it's ours. It's not our children. It's not our family. It's ours. What we want. That's
really important. All right, thank you, Lena. Bobbianne, what are you doing to help be that vibrant advocate?
Yeah, what I do is I'm an artist. That's my piece. Like, that's where I find myself. So if I'm getting fried, like, I know I need to go to the studio. That's what fills me up and brings vibrance back in my life. Now it looks different, right? Like, it's not like I do a lot of sculpture and stuff, so I can't like bring Asher in to the welding studio, right? But we can do coloring and things together, because he really loves art, and I'm teaching him to be an artist and have those goals and those abilities, because he works super hard at his artwork. And I'll just give an example, like, first time we taken a vacation ever, and we went to Legoland, and Legoland's in upstate New York, and Dia's right there, right? Like, so I was like, oh my God, should I do it? So we went to Legoland the first day, kind of wore him out, and I was like, this is a very, very professional art gallery. Mama will never pay off the art if you break it. He was a perfect gentleman, but he's an artist too. So I brought him along with me on that journey, So there's different ways that you can include your kids to still get to be you, right? And that's what I've had to learn for me is like, oh, I have to have him in the perfect setting, blah blah blah. No, I still have to be me, and we still have to function, but that looks different than what neurotypical kids would look like, right? Like, I can't take my son to a typical babysitter. He has aggressive issues, he has meltdowns, he gets triggered from his trauma. An 18-year-old is not going to be able to handle that. So it looks different. I just bring him with me and bring him along on that journey so I don't lose myself, and he can gain from that too. And seeing that mom's not losing that boundary. Mom's still here. Mom's still my mom, but this is what my mom does, and I can partake. So I think that's important.
That's great. Great. Interesting. And Amy, how about you? What are you doing for yourself when you're not homeschooling your kids?
First, I want to reiterate that the number one thing that most autistic adults will say is that they wish their parents had gone to therapy, because, we can get into such a reactionary place as parents because we're kind of like reacting to our own experiences growing up, and we can end up not realizing that we're like reacting instead of like doing what we really want to do. So I do think that is critical. One thing I noticed with my kids when they were younger, when I started doing yoga, they started doing better. They weren't doing yoga. I was the one doing yoga. But because I was feeling better, they were feeling better. So that really kind of opened my eyes to just how important it is. There is an educational philosopher who is my absolute favorite. I've studied many, being, homeschooler, also like having studied school psychology. Her name was Charlotte Mason. She lived in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And what she said was, every day a child needs something to love, something to think about, and something to do. And what I realized was that if I would look for those things every day, that I would feel more filled up, that I would feel more content with whatever my circumstances were, whether I was homebound, bedbound, or just, living my life. And I found that the kids need that too. And so I try to, as we are going about our day, to look for those things to make sure we're including those opportunities, bringing them along, helping them find the things that they love, enjoying the things I love. The other thing is that I try to remember that everyone in our house deserves to have their basic needs met. What those basic needs are going to be for each person are going to vary, and I can't do everything. But everybody can have their basic needs met. So for one person at the moment, that might be a health crisis. For another person, that might mean, you know what? They really need their social opportunity to go be with friends. Or like this past year, my main thing was my health because it hadn't been very good this past year. But what I learned from the experience is that's my main need. But like my daughter's main need, that's going to sewing class and then getting poke bowls afterwards. And if I don't do that, then I'm paying for therapy. So I might as well as do sewing class and poke bowls. So finding what those things are to help you feel good in the circumstances that you're in, and recognizing that everybody's got something different that they need, and trying to prioritize at least one thing for each person.
Yeah, great. I was going to ask, but I'm not, but I'll tell you what I decided to do instead. We all have challenges, and I was going to say, so what are your biggest challenges? But I don't think that's really the most important thing. What I really want to hear is, how have you better learned to deal with your bigger challenges? What have you learned along the way when dealing with your needs or your child's needs? Have you come to any realization that, this is a better way to go about dealing with things? So, for example, when you're a parent, you want to tell you, clean up your room. You just want the room clean. And then you realize they're not listening. I've got to find a better way to approach this. And what I've come to realize is the person should always be more important than the task. If you make the person feel less important than the task, well, they don't matter. So I'm wondering, what have you learned in your journey with your child about how to deal with your challenges? What realizations have you come to, if any? Or what thoughts do you have about how you might approach them differently now than you might have a few years earlier? So Bobbianne, for example, I was really intrigued when you said you brought your son to this highfalutin gallery. Do you, for example, are you saying, well, I'm learning to trust my son more than I might have a couple years ago? So this is what I'm kind of interested in. What realizations have you come to now that you might not have had a few years ago?
Yeah, and I agree, like, with everybody that, like, therapy, I go to therapy too, and I try, getting nonverbal therapy for someone right now is difficult. So we've tried music therapy and so forth. But keep learning. Like, I got an RBT, and one of the best things I learned in that course was, why are you talking right now? Like, why are you saying what you're saying? Take a moment and step back. Is getting upset because the room isn't cleaned, is that going to have any effect on Asher? No, he's not. He doesn't. He's like, I'm playing. Like, I'm just playing right now. So stepping back and thinking about those things, learning, taking different classes, keep improving myself. So I keep becoming a better and better parent, right? Like, I don't have to get an RBT. I don't have to renew my CNA. I don't have to do any of those things, but that self-improvement improves me and makes me a better person, and it makes me a better parent for him. So that's how I'm taking those challenges. And then as challenges come up, right? Like, after everything we went through, who wants to battle with the school? Well, that's just where we are right now, but maybe that there's a reason for that. I'm not the only one. Asher's not the only one. And that fuels my fire to keep doing that, because I don't want the generation coming up behind me to have this battle, right? If a neuropsych says the child needs outsourced, that should be end of story. But it's not. And no special needs parent should have to pay the special needs tax of having to get a lawyer to get your son the appropriate education. Period. End of story.
Absolutely.
So that's what I hope for and I work towards. And that keeps me going on those hard nights in the middle of the night when I'm crying, because I have those moments too, you know?
Yeah, most definitely. Jeanetta, any light bulb moments that you've had that sort of prompted you to say, let's try this instead of what I've been doing in the past?
Amy said something a moment ago that I thought was really spot on, and it's funny because you hear it from somebody else and you connect the pieces a little bit more easily, and it's almost like it was a perfect segue. She was talking about how when she cares for herself, it's better for the kids. And I don't know how many of y'all can attest to this, but in my case with Lindsay, she reads the energy in a room better than any kid I've ever been around. If the room is tense, she's tense. If the room is mellow, she's mellow. And so there's, we have learned very quickly that the more calm we are, the better she is. And some of this comes with maturity. I don't know that all of the same practices that I can employ now are things that I could have done when she was 2 or 3 and she was just running and screaming. But I have learned that through any challenge that we have now, the more I treat her the way I expect a response from her, the better we are. So if she's upset and anxious or worried about something, and I'm able to be calm about it and talk about it with her, or just kind of sit with her, even if I'm not having to say much, that she can feel that I'm more calm about this idea, she starts adapting to what I'm doing. And it's really easy when your child is having frustrations and, behaviors or moments of them not shining and being their best self. When they're like that, it's easy to be frustrated with them and to be, short-tempered or, want something to be a different result. But if you just sit in that place with them for a minute and you kind of lead them out of it by a form of example or by a calm force in it, that has been probably the secret sauce that I've learned the best. If I want something of her, I need to act the way that I want her to act in return. And the more that, I've coached up my son, her brother that's 2 years older, he's an excellent older brother, but he will teach people that, right? Like when she's with her grandparents, Jackson will be the first one to be like, no, Lindsay, I'm going to sit with you. I'm going to talk to you. We're going to get through this. And the more he brings down the temperature of everything, the easier it is for everybody. And I would encourage other families to be very cognizant of that when they're in those moments. Because really, it's no different than if you're in an argument with your spouse, right? If you calm down first, then the whole argument between you and your spouse or whoever you're frustrated with calms down. But if we can do that with our kids, that's probably any challenge that we've done, that's in our moment. And I just thought it was interesting that she turned that from self-care into it being meaningful for the whole family, because the better we are, the better our families will be.
Very good. Suri, do you have any light bulb moments in particular that you've come to any realization now that you didn't have earlier?
Yeah, I could probably write a book. You do this for 15
Give us your top ones. We're trying to impart the wisdom.
I definitely will do that. I just want to piggyback on what Amy and Jeanetta said. I think that that using co-regulation and really using our own I don't want to say calm, but our own self-regulation to influence the regulation of a child is extremely powerful. And I think it's a space where interpersonal neurobiology is really kind of guiding parenting, and it's guiding a lot of the research. Nervous systems impact nervous systems, and the more regulated parents are, the more regulated their children will be without doing anything else. Just to address your question directly, I think if I had to kind of encapsulate it, I would say I've learned to be more dialectical. When I first started this journey 15 years ago, I was 15 years younger, and I was very attached to a certain outcome. This is the way that it was going to be. Now that actually was very helpful, because when I left one major medical center here in Los Angeles with my daughter with a terrible diagnosis and the prediction that she was going to die pretty soon, but to just take her home. There's nothing else you can do. I looked at the doctor in the eye and I said, yeah, that's not going to happen. That's just not going to happen. So I was very attached to an outcome that involved life. On the other hand, I've also learned to detach from an outcome because with children like this, with chronic medical conditions, with things that are degenerative or uncertain, you cannot be happy and attached to a particular outcome at the same time. And so there are these two almost polar opposites, right? You've got to be focused on an outcome in order to be directed and get your child what they need and advocate. On the other hand, you also have to detach from the outcome in order to be accepting of your situation, your child, as they are. And that is, I think that's a skill. It really took me some time to learn how to hold space for acceptance of our journey, of our daughter's journey, of who she is, of where she is, and recognize that she can grow and she can change. And being able to hold space for both of those at the same time seems like an impossibility because they're dialectics, but it's not impossible. And that was super, super helpful to me. And the other thing I think that was incredibly helpful was to find an expert in the field and take myself out of the picture. I think that I can't speak for anybody else but myself, but I can get an idea of what I think needs to happen. And my ideas are not always right. Sometimes they're fear-driven, sometimes they're self-righteous, sometimes they're angry. There can be lots of human things that go into what I think. And I can very clearly remember when my daughter was ready for preschool. And I didn't want to send her to preschool. I wanted to keep her home safe. I wanted to keep her away from germs and other children and the possibility of getting sick and having a terrible crisis and setback and all kinds of, organ failure and coma and all kinds of bad stuff. And I'm like, I'm keeping her home safe. And our very incredible geneticist said, no, you're going to raise her the way that you would any other child, and you're going to give her a joyful life in the process. My best thinking was bubble child. And our geneticist was able to, I think, from an effective place, and I think effectiveness is underrated, from a very effective place, say, that's not the right way to go. And for me to be able to put aside myself and my agenda and be able to be humble and listen to an expert's opinion and advice, at the same time, not turning over everything I know and believe in as a parent, again, another dialectic, I think was extremely important. Ultimately, we're parents, we're not medical professionals. I certainly am not a medical professional. And I have to come to a place where I can recognize that there are people that are way smarter than I am. I'm good at what I do for a living, and my geneticist is really good at what he does for a living. And so being able to put that trust in someone who's an expert and know that I've done the best I can to find the best professional to guide us and then let go of the outcome has been really helpful. We may not always make the right decisions, but at least I can move through life from a place of self-regulation, calm, joy, happiness. Over the last 15 years, we've gone through some really rough times, but we've also seen 3 children get married. We've welcomed in 7 grandchildren, a lot of good stuff. And I think that that's allowed us to really celebrate the good things in life, as opposed to, hanging on by our fingernails. So like I said, I could probably write a book, but in a nutshell, I would say that's probably
really awesome explanations. And we still have 2 more to go. And I feel like, wow, there's a lot to chew on right here. So, Amy, I'll let you go next, and then Lena, you, and then we're going to have to wrap up because we've almost annihilated 1 hour, and everybody's busy. So go ahead, Amy.
Well, it's perfect for me to follow Suri because I did write a book. I wrote a book that actually talks about a lot of these things. The 2 number 1 things that I learned that are in the book is, one, I mentioned Charlotte Mason earlier, and it really had a profound effect on me because her first principle of education was that children are born people. And I think a lot of times we look at children as second-class citizens, and we don't actually think that they know what's best for them. We don't think that they can have an opinion that is worth listening to. And I have learned to listen to my children with my eyes and with my ears, and to try and hear whatever they might be telling me, because they are the people who should be the directors of their own life. Whether they have a lot of support doing that or not, it's still their life to live, not mine. And there were a lot of things I learned through reading her principles, because she talked about how a lot of times as adults, we tend to manipulate children because we're afraid. And we want to see things turn out the way that we think they should, because it makes us feel less afraid, like we're in control. We do that through love by saying, oh, please do this because you love mommy, or, through fear, do this or I'm going to do this. And trying to really recognize when I'm trying to unintentionally be manipulative and to listen to what they have to say, and let that play a big role. The other thing that I wrote about in the book that I also was profoundly impacted by is seeing how Maslow's hierarchy of needs plays out in supporting my kids. Because a lot of times that it's usually represented as a pyramid where you have physical needs, then safety needs, then love and belonging, then self-esteem, and then finally you have self-actualization. And at least in my line of work, we're looking at education. And a lot of times people really like to start with education because they're like, my kid's got a problem. Obviously, we need to work on their education. And I'm like, guys, that happens at the top of the pyramid in self-actualization. If you don't have the other pieces in line, it doesn't matter. So if you feel like crap on the inside, you're not going to learn well. If you don't feel safe and secure, then you're not going to learn well. If you don't feel like you belong and that you're accepted for the person that you are, you're not going to learn well. And so recognizing that, and then trying to recognize the importance of addressing things in the order that they are most important, both of those things had a real profound impact on how I have worked to support my own children.
Awesome. Lena, any light bulb moments for you? Key sort of takeaways?
Yeah, well, I would say, that, therapy is always, is a wonderful thing. I didn't start with therapy like Amy said. I started therapy, but, like kind of late. And I should start having therapy way early, because I was managing all these feelings and I didn't know what to do. Then if somebody is like quiet, it's not expressive, like it's not screaming, it's not talking all the time. Like for me, I always have been very, very extremely quiet. Then when I have all these feelings, the anger, the frustration, and everything like that, I was just holding it out to myself. Do you understand what I mean? I thought that maybe that was the way that I could. That's the way that I learned to do it. I didn't learn to express my feelings, because part of my culture, my parents are always, they told me like, oh, don't say that. If something happened to you, just don't say it. Nobody needs to know. Then I was holding everything over there. And that make a big hole in my life. And then when I start talking, just sharing with like people, lately say, I can't sleep. I can't sleep. I passed 3 nights without sleep. My daughter doesn't sleep. She has a sleeping disorder. Then when I start talking about that, then I have another parent that, then you can have a connection. Then you have a community. Then I wasn't by myself anymore. Now I have somebody that before I was by myself. Then that was, the thing that I say, I should do that, but I didn't know, because that was the way that I was raised, Then live and learn. I choose your battles. I always say choose my battles. If this one is really worth it to fight with my child, or is something that is really doesn't make sense. But I'm going to fight with her like it's black, no, it's white, it's black, whatever, you know. But it's some things that we need to fight it. Then try to find the best way, you know, to talk and address the situation and be calm. That we are calm. We have a lot of patience, so but more calm. Thank you.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'm going to wrap this up, and I have to tell you, this to me is like a 5-star Netflix documentary with all the wisdom and experience. I'm kind of blown away. I was thinking, what's the right way to bring an event like this to closure? And I'm struggling because when I'm trying to extract from all this and whittle it down, it's impossible. The one thing that hits me the most is the strength that you all have, the emotional strength and intelligence. I think that is necessary to help you be the best you can be and your special needs child be the best they can be. And I think you've all pointed out, right, there's high points to this and low points to this. That's the ebb and flow of life, right? That's one of the big lessons here. It's okay to fail. It's okay to have setbacks. You learn from the setbacks. And there's also the high points that you have to sort of bask in and take a step back and say, how did we get to this better place, right? It's a constant process. That's what I'm hearing in terms of big picture. So I'm going to throw back to you, to throw back to me. Yes, you're right, Nick. You're way off base. You know, this is kind of what we think. So hit me with your best shots on this. Tell me what you think, Bobbianne. Am I way off base here? Do you have a different spin?
No, I used to joke because Asher had colic so bad, you could tell a colic mom in an instant, right? They had a strength, and then they had that in-depth knowledge and patience. I think it's the same thing with special needs moms. We are strong women, and we are warrior women for our children so that they can have the best future possible. And we do everything that we can to be our best selves so that they can have their best selves, right? And I think that's a lot what we've talked about today is our journeys through that. And part of the reason like Nick and I wanted to have this is we wanted, you know, our community here at NeuroNeeds to know that you're not alone in this, that we get it, and look at all of these amazing women here and the stories that they're telling. Your community is out here and we're here for you. So don't forget that in the middle of the night when you're crying, like we're here. And we're just, you know, a Zoom call away, so to speak. We're here.
It's a great message, and we're definitely going to make this an annual event here. May
I interject one thing? Just one little thought. We spent a lot of time talking about some of the hardships and the perseverance that it requires, and then you gave all of us the accolades on saying how emotionally intelligent. I just wanted to say for a moment that our kids also bring a lot of light and joy. You know, I would hate for this whole call to go without us mentioning the amount of immense joy that each one of our kids bring into our lives, and that if it weren't through Lindsay, that I wouldn't be the person that I am today. The emotional intelligence that you gave me a high five for a moment ago, I wouldn't have half of that if it weren't for my experience with her, if it weren't for the patience that she taught me and for the things that I've learned by being her mom. And so there are hardships and there are a lot of things that we do have to talk about as far as overcoming that. But I would hate to have wrapped this call without giving a shout out to all of our kids, because we're fighting for them because they are a joy in our life and because of the wonderful things that they bring too.
Absolutely. I mean, I think Jeanetta, it tended to be a little more subtle when Bobbianne talked about taking her kid to the art gallery, or I think Amy or Suri talking about, well, we had challenges and positive points. I think you're right. I mean, I think like everything in life, sometimes we learn more from the rougher moments than the happier moments. But you're right. That's not in any way to demean and to cast aside. And thank you for mentioning it. The bright light moments too, of which I'm sure there are plenty of, and hopefully will be many more.
I want to add one more thing too.
Yeah, I want everyone to add something.
Everyone wants to add something now. I just want to say that, yes, it does take a certain amount of strength and determination to, and self-sacrifice to be willing to, give up some of the things that we give up to be able to provide our children with what they need. But I also think that our kids show an extraordinarily large amount of strength themselves and determination. So for as much strength as we might have, they have just as much, if not more sometimes. So, I don't know, got to give credit where credit is due.
Glad to hear it. All right. Lena?
No, I would just say that yes, what Suri said, she's right. We learn, we are strong because of our children. My daughter, even though she's not verbal, she's my inspiration in life. I still dedicate my life for her, and I'm happy. I love her. That's why I will never give my parental rights. Never.
Yeah.
If it wasn't an old one, I say, okay, yes, let me, where I sign. But, she's my whole life. Then, I'm the person who I am for her. I love her so much. I want to see her every day. I call her every day. I bring her here every weekend. And regardless that it's all challenges, then that's the way that we are with our children. We love them. We love them so much. And we accept them how the way that they are.
Exactly right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Suri, I don't know if I've heard from you in this.
Yeah, maybe I'm going to be the dissenting voice here, although I definitely agree that our children are the inspiration. I actually don't see myself as a warrior or that I have any strength. I really, I think I had and I have two choices every day. I could get up and do whatever my child needs today, or I could curl up and die. There really isn't an in between. That's really, I don't think that I had great options. It's sort of, my other children, when Bailey was young and quite ill, would say, "Isn't this what the safe surrender at the fire station is for? Could you just drop her off there?" And they said it tongue in cheek, but that isn't an option. She's our child. We love her. She's an incredible human being. But I don't see myself as a warrior. I get up, I do what I have to do. I'm there for my child. I do the best I can, because the alternative, just turning over and giving up is really not an option. And so, I just, show up with grace every day and put my best foot forward, and that's it. Smile. If I can end every day with a smile and with grace, then it was a good day.
Wow.
I think Lena's word, love, is really the best descriptor, because love looks like strength sometimes, but it also is a heck of a whole lot more. And that really, I think, defines every single one of us, like in our experiences. It really is about the love we have for our children.
Yeah, well put. Well, maybe the final piece, I could just keep going. You guys are really, really great speakers and interesting. Have you all learned something today from each other that you might not have been aware of or fully understood? Or did this just reinforce what you already knew? I'm very curious to hear about this, certainly in the context of what Bobbianne talked about, the community. What about that, Jeanetta? Look, you could say I already knew all this and it affirms what I knew or whatever. I'm very curious about this because there are
I think it renews a couple different ideas. One, that we're also vastly different walking through this journey and that none of us should speak on behalf of everybody as a total because we have such varying different experiences. So I think that that is just kind of another staple that I hope others that are watching or participate kind of take away too, because we all do have such different journeys. And this is a good visualization of that. The other piece of it is that no matter where you are and how different your journey is, it's nice to know that you're part of a larger tapestry, that there are other parents that are out there that understand what you're talking about and the feelings that you have. You know, you can feel really, really proud of yourself when something goes wonderfully fantastic, and you can feel pretty low when none of the things are adding up the way that you expected them to. And inside of one particular family, if nobody else knows that feeling, it can feel very lonesome and isolating. And you're not always able to connect with families in the way that we would like to. So I think that moments like this show a whole swath of families out there that they might be walking a path similar to mine. They might be walking a path similar to Bobbianne's. But that there's somebody that they can identify with that is in a similar situation and that they're not alone in their thoughts, their processes, and their feelings. So, yeah, my two takeaways are that we should speak for ourselves, not speak for the general community as a whole, because I don't know what it's like to be Lena. You know, I hear it and I'm sympathetic to it, but I don't know her experience well enough to say it for her. And I just think it's good anytime we can all listen to each other and kind of gain a little perspective.
Amy?
I think honestly, like, it's just kind of reinforced for me something that I've noticed many times before, just how much love parents have for their children and just how willing they are to do the best that they can for them. And what a privilege to get to be a part of relationships and community with other people, other moms who feel the same way. I think that's wonderful.
Oh, that's great. Bobbianne, anything that takeaway, anything that struck you today, or just a reaffirmation, or?
Yeah, just like how in depth our community is. I think a lot of times people, they don't understand special needs. So as a person with special needs, you know, we can be, I feel like I was just watching a movie promo before this, and it's about a couple trying to get married, but they both have SSI and they can't. If they do, they'll lose all of their benefits and their insurance. And they were talking about how, you know, like, I deserve to be married and be a human being, even though I have these disabilities or abilities that are just different, and how in depth our community is, the special needs community is, and how much we have to offer the world. So that's what I was thinking about, is that like we were talking about that tapestry, it has so much depth and beauty and grace within it, and I think that that's really important message to have out there in the world, that we have so much to offer.
Great. Okay, Lena, and then Suri, you'll be last, and we'll have to wrap this up, I'm sorry to say.
Well, I would say that, you know, it catch, you know, my attention that we are very resilient, that we have the strength that we have, and also the part that you know, all of us, you know, we go for therapy. Then I think so, you know, this is a big part, especially right now that we are living in a world that mental health is a big crisis right now. Then having extra help help us, you know, to build ourselves and be the best that we can. And then that's for me. Thank you.
Suri, I'm giving you the
Yeah, I think what I'm walking away with is just a feeling of being very grateful to have had the opportunity to meet the other moms on this panel and hear their stories. For us, this has been a very isolating journey because mitochondrial disease is tricky, and no two mitochondrial disease patients look the same. And so even in a cohort of mito moms, my experience has always been very different than the person next to me, and their experience is different than the person next to them. And so I kind of gave up on the group support, the network kind of thing over a decade ago, really, because our experience was just different. I wasn't getting support, and didn't think I can offer much. And I'm glad to have had this opportunity to really, through maybe a more mature, maybe a less traumatized pair of eyes, to really see how much I can gain from people with human experiences. The content may not be the same as my content, but the process is very much the same. So I'm very grateful for that.
Well, I want to thank you all. I want to say, for me, listening to you all, what really hit me was the power of human relationships and the human spirit. I think it's just saying what you all have said is so impactful to the world in so many ways, because what you're doing is you're taking your experiences and putting them out there for people to learn and get some guidance in their life, but also to develop that important relationship that they may need at both the good times and bad times. Because I think at the end of the day, nobody can do this alone. Like there's an old joke in sports that I tell my son all the time: you can't play all the positions on the baseball field at once. Strengths, weaknesses, limitations, we all have them. It's what's really important is recognizing them and then finding that great network of people that can help fill those other positions for us. That's what I'm hearing loud and clear. That's why these events, I think, matter so much. Otherwise, people are streaming on the net getting these bits of information, but they have no one to bounce it off, to talk to about, to understand how it's relevant for them or impactful for them. And I hope you all keep this going in your own communities, in your own way, however that might be. I know we at NeuroNeeds intend to keep this going. We're going to have a dad's event next month, hopefully, and then a sibling event. And it's my intention to keep these going each and every year, and to push this particular event out in social media for all to hear the great words I think you all had to offer. I found it very inspirational and meaningful. And I thank you all very much for doing this.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, thank you guys.
Yes.
All
Thank
right.
you, everybody.
Well,
Thank you.
as always, consult your physician before trying any of our products. For more information, visit neuroneeds.com. We would appreciate it if you would like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for being part of our journey.